We've got 1.2 million illegal immigrants, it is thought now, in this country, many of whom, probably most of whom, would have come here under Tory governments and under Tory immigration rules. So, if there are that many illegal immigrants coming here, and more coming here than there are in any other part of the EU, in any other country of the EU, then clearly something isn't working very well in the immigration system. The point system which they operate in Australia is apparently going to be adopted by Priti Patel and this particular Tory party if they get re-elected to government. The Labour Party are not quite so sure what their policy is going to be on freedom of movement. That all seems to be a bit up in the air, depending, of course, on whether they get in and whether they decide to give us all a second referendum. Let's talk to John Rentoul to try and make sense of it all. John, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Well, I mean, the election process is well underway. The sort of the claims and the statements and the I don't want to say lies, but things that are being said which may turn out not to be.
We don't use that kind of language.
No, we don't. We certainly don't. But this immigration conversation has taken a bit of an interesting turn, whereby Priti Patel is claiming that the Labour Party's policies would mean an extra 840,000 people coming here. I'm not quite sure how she works that out.
No, and the Conservative press release, which I've just read, in order to prepare myself properly for coming on your excellent programme,
yes,
does not explain the basis for that 840,000 figure. But what it does is it says that Labour wants to extend free movement of people beyond, not just wants to keep it for the European Union, but it wants to extend it beyond that to the rest of the world. And Labour, of course, have put out a statement saying, no, we don't. That's not what the policy that was passed at our party conference actually said. Now, so I've even, for service to your listeners, Mike, I've even read the Labour Party motion that was carried at the party conference in October.
Yeah.
And it's clear, and it's true, it is completely ambiguous as to what it means. It does talk about extending free movement. But the Labour press operation is saying that just means extending the rights of free movement to either giving EU citizens more rights. It doesn't mean extending it beyond Europe. But in that case, why pass such a badly worded motion?
Well, quite. And I suppose inevitably we can't really work out what Labour Party policy would be on immigration, depending on what happens vis-a-vis, one, the election result, and two, a second referendum if they were to get into power.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, Labour Party's policy is going to be to have this second referendum, and everybody knows that the Labour Party's position in that referendum is going to be to campaign to remain. And if we remain in the EU, then we keep free movement. And so, in essence, Labour's immigration policy is not to change free movement, which is the most important part of it, I suppose. Although, actually, we get more net immigration from outside the EU, but that's not something that we would expect a Labour government to take a particularly hard line on. And that's the difference between the two parties. I mean, Priti Patel, when she's asked, will say that she wants immigration to be lower, whereas Jeremy Corbyn, if he's asked that same question, won't give a straight answer.
And the trouble with the Tory party's promises on immigration in the past is that they've always said they want immigration to be lower, but it doesn't always work out that then that's what happens.
No, absolutely. I mean, Theresa May stuck to that figure of trying to get net immigration down below 100,000. And the point is, she didn't even manage to achieve that for net immigration from outside the EU, which is the one bit that she could control as Home Secretary and then as Prime Minister. David Cameron didn't seem to care very much that he was sort of promising to get net immigration down to tens of thousands and had no prospect of reaching that figure. He just said that's Theresa May's problem.
Yeah, and also we know from the illegal immigration figures that at least 1,000 people have travelled here from the French coast, basically on these dirigible boats, which have come in to various beaches and points across the UK. All of those people, once they've got here, have stayed here.
That's right. I mean, and that terrible tragedy in Essex with those 39 people dead in a truck. Did suggest that that's a fairly large-scale operation of illegal immigration that's going on. I mean, and nobody knows how many got in and didn't die. So, it's clearly a very big problem. But it all, in an election campaign, it all comes down to a very simple choice, doesn't it? I mean, because everyone just assumes that the Conservatives will try a bit harder than a Labour government would to try and get control of the issue. Jeremy Corbyn's got a big task on his hand to persuade us that he would actually administer the immigration system more efficiently than a Tory government would.
And this is, again, leading us into that same kind of cul-de-sac of doubt, really, because he can't possibly lay out what his manifesto is. I understand they're going to be working on their manifesto and releasing it sometime over the weekend in conjunction with trade unions and everybody else that has to be part of the process. But it's going to be very difficult for them to make policy without knowing whether we're going to be in the EU or not, aren't they? Isn't it?
Well, except that, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt as to what the Labour Party's official position on that will be when the time comes. I mean, I think the party members are all remain 80% Remainers. I mean, you do have some powerful voices at the top. You've got Len McCluskey, who's I think he's in Guardian today saying that he thinks we should leave the EU and end free movement.
Yes.
So there is a dispute in the Labour Party, but I mean, I think overall, I think there's no doubt about which way the Labour Party is leaning on that question. They want to stay in the EU and keep free movement.
Yes, but also it sort of leads to conversations on the doorstep, does it not? If they start talking about immigration in a big way, where people will say, "Well, what happens if we're still in the EU, or what happens if we're not?" And then you know what I mean? They're putting themselves in a situation they don't want to be in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that is the fence that Jeremy Corbyn has chosen to sit on, and he's trying to fend off Jo Swinson on the other side. I mean, she's very clear about her EU policy. And Jeremy Corbyn wants to try to hog as much of that Remainer vote as he can, while hanging on to some Leave voters in Labour heartlands.
And I mean, we were talking yesterday about the polls now showing a 14-point lead for the Tories in those 317 seats, which the Brexit Party have said they're not going to fight, basically. By the end of today, we'll have all the kind of candidates in place. Are you expecting there to be any sort of surprises between now and 4 o'clock when all of that happens?
Yes, no, I do think there will be some individual Brexit Party candidates who will fail to put in their nomination papers. Because we've seen Brexit Party candidates standing down in various parts of the country saying they don't want to split the Leave vote, and that was part of the pressure that was on Nigel Farage to do his unilateral pact, as he called it.
Yeah.
And I suspect there'll be more of them. But I mean, Nigel Farage yesterday said he wasn't going to be standing down in Tory target seats that are currently held by Labour. But I just think that in a number of places, I think we'll see the individual candidates taking unilateral action.
Yeah, and given that, rightly or wrongly, immigration was quite a major factor for some people in the referendum in 2016, as far as leaving the European Union was concerned, is it likely to become a big factor, do you think, a big debating point, once we have the TV debates, once we have, the sort of going down to the wire time in the next couple of weeks?
I think so. I mean, it is one of those issues that the media don't particularly like to talk about, but it is one of the top issues that the people care about. If you ask them what are the issues facing the country, although to be fair, actually, you ask people what are the issues facing the country, and they say Brexit, the NHS, and immigration.
Yeah.
But if you ask them what are the issues that matter most to them and their families, immigration drops right down the list. I mean, most people don't think it personally affects them. I mean, I think they do worry about the principle of a country that can't control who's coming in and who's not.
Yeah. I mean, I think it seems to me to be an important issue if it's affecting you, i.e. if you're living in one of those cities or towns where it would appear that quite a lot of immigration from one particular place has happened. For example, lots of people came from the Czech Republic and somehow ended up in Peterborough for some reason, not quite sure why. But obviously, if you live in Peterborough, that's an issue for you. If you live in the East End of London, you might be more concerned about immigration coming in from, say, countries outside of the European Union. You know what I mean? So, but if you live in sort of rural Dorset, where really nobody comes there at all from anywhere else other than rural Dorset and London, you probably don't care.
Well, and also I do think that immigration is one of those issues where if you care about it, you've already made up your mind which party to support, and it's usually if you want tighter restrictions on immigration, then you're more likely to vote Conservative. I mean, why would you vote Labour in that if that was the thing that really mattered to you? So I doubt if it would move large numbers of votes, but it is important to a lot of people, and therefore it probably will come up in the TV debates. You're absolutely right.
And what about the sort of the nature of the debate so far, as you're seeing it? Because it seems to me, as we've said many times, this is going to be quite an unusual election. It's going to be quite an important election, but it's being operated and run in kind of a strange way, it seems to me. I don't know whether I've just been looking at it for too long or my eyes are starting to glaze over, but this whole kind of campaigning mode seems to be there's something wrong with it all somehow. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it.
I know what you mean. I mean, there is a sort of slight feeling of a phony war at the moment.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal, isn't it?
Because we don't have. In the old days, we had a very strict routine. You had a morning press conference from each of the main parties, and the sort of issues that came up in those press conferences would tend to sort of dominate the day of campaigning, whereas it's a bit more sort of unfocused and random now. And I do think Boris Johnson's personality has got quite a lot to do with that. I mean, watching his speech yesterday, I mean, it was very entertaining and all that, and it is unfortunately, I have to admit, it is fun to watch a politician who enjoys using language in such a sort of interesting way. I mean, it's such a relief after Theresa May, but there wasn't much content there. I mean, you didn't feel that he was actually getting to grips with the issues or presenting himself as someone who's going to administer the country in a sort of efficient and effective way.
No.
But you were entertained by him talking about the only sort of hard crouton of fact in the minestrone of muddle that is Labour's Brexit policy. I mean, that sort of stuff is entertaining. There's no question about it. It
is. And I think the pictures of Boris kind of rather gingerly at the helm of an electric taxi driving at about 1 mile an hour, which is probably the reenactment of driving around London, to be fair, at that sort of speed. It just didn't look like... I mean, if you wanted a man, the sort of Margaret Thatcher on a tank image, that wasn't it.
No, that is not it. But, it is a sort of have I got news for you type election.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right.
He does entertain people. And, the question is to what extent people think that translates into being a good Prime Minister of the country.
Yeah, well, we shall see. John, as ever, thank you very much indeed. John Rentoul there, Chief Political Commentator at The Independent. I think that pretty well sums it up. It's the Have I Got News for You election. That's what it looks like to me. It actually does look like some kind of strange, slightly off-colour comedy show, a sketch show, about what is actually going on, really, in an election. It just seems very odd indeed. We want to talk some more about immigration. We want to hear from you as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's obviously a place that a lot of people want to come and live in. The problem for me is that how do they actually know there's 1.2 million illegal immigrants? Because if they're illegal, presumably you don't actually know where they are.
They don't actually have a correct estimate. They can only they can't give us a figure of how many people have claimed asylum here.
Yeah.
And how many people have called. We can double.
Harjat, we'll try and get you on a better line because the line at the moment is breaking up and it's not quite ready for prime time. We can't quite hear what you're actually saying. But let me give you some of the basics here, because this is the new figures that are coming out today, published in the Times this morning, about how many illegal immigrants have made their way to this country. Up to 1.2 million illegal immigrants are estimated to be living in Britain, the highest number of any country in the European Union. This is research by the population research by the US Pew Research Centre. This news comes just after, of course, 39 Vietnamese migrants were found dead in a refrigerated container in Essex as they were being smuggled into the country. We've also learned that more than 1,000 people have crossed the Channel on small boats so far this year, following the tightening of controls in Calais. And the problem, of course, for Britain in this scenario is that basically those people who do make it here are normally allowed to stay. Harjap, sorry, I think we've got a better line now.
Hopefully.
No, that's good, yeah. So, I mean, as far as the people who come here and then claim asylum are concerned, I mean, is that something that you would say is a well-worn process, one that works properly, or one that sort of is full of holes?
There are holes in there, but people do come here, claim asylum. They're then considered while their application is pending. They're allowed into the community, and then once it's decided, they'll be attempted to be removed. If they've claimed asylum in a third country before coming here, then they'll be removed to that country. So it's a system which we've got to remember. Look, the Home Office isn't fit for purpose. We hear it every year in a report. So we've got a system that isn't fit for purpose, creating a system, and therefore obviously there's going to be holes. But it is a system which is in place. and it does monitor how many people do claim asylum here, and does deal with claims.
Sure. Now, according to this report, more than half of the people who have come here illegally are from the Asia-Pacific region, which includes China, Vietnam, India and Pakistan, another 20% from sub-Saharan African states as well. You'd have to assume that the Tory party's new points-based system would prevent this from happening, but obviously if it's happening illegally at the moment, I mean, how will the new system stop it from happening illegally under a new system?
The new system will have nothing to do with asylum. The points-based system is a system to allow skilled workers to come here and to allow people that we need to take the positions, fill the positions that the British people can't fill, or highly skilled jobs such as doctors, teachers, nurses. That won't prevent people from claiming asylum here, nor will leaving the EU. That will not prevent people from claiming asylum here. But what the leaving the EU will control is the people who come from within the EU and they're non-EU dependent and partners and that are coming here and settling here. That can be controlled by Brexit. But anything else to do with Southeast Asia or the Pacific, that won't have anything to do with us with Brexit or leaving, the EU. Because it's not migration from within the EU. These people are trafficked by gangs and they arrive by boats and lorries and, through ships and even on airplanes where they overstay or they claim asylum later at the airport. So that really won't have anything to do with the EU.
And we don't seem to be getting any better at stopping that, really, because interestingly enough, one of the stats that stands out really is that we have more illegal immigration into this country than any other country in the EU. Yeah,
I mean, Mike, we have been trying to we've been listening to talk from politicians every election, every 5 years. Yeah, we're tough borders, we're Fortress Britain. But I've been in immigration law since 2002, and the flow of people that are coming in, it hasn't been stopped. We can't control our borders. We don't control our borders. We haven't got enough security on them. What's the most surprising thing is, Mike, they come in through the same routes they're coming in 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We haven't even managed Zeebrugge, Calais, Dover, the ports.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, those 39 poor souls who were discovered dead in a container supposedly came in, at the beginning anyway, to the European continent via Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, the most trafficked route is most people come to Moscow, and then from Moscow they're trafficked by foot over the border of the Slovak Republic, and then they're dispersed by the gangs to Italy, Spain, Germany, Belgium, Holland, and in the end, the UK. So this is how the gangs work. The routes are the same, but they're just 3 steps ahead of all the border force. Now, if you're telling me that a person can get by foot with a gang of 30 people from Moscow to the UK without being caught en route, then that's not believable.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, they don't have to go through that many borders, I suppose, do they? I mean, they have to go through a couple, but not that many.
Oh, they do have to go through various borders from Moscow. But, how can you not detect 30 people in a lorry? We have technology which can detect body heat and we can detect whether people are breathing or not in vehicles. And yet we don't seem to be stopping these people.
Although, strangely, one of the things that we did learn, and obviously it's a very high-risk strategy, apparently if they're in a refrigerated lorry, that can't work for some bizarre reason. And if they're in a refrigerated lorry for a short enough time that they can survive, they can't be spotted, apparently, by this technology, which I find extraordinary.
Yeah, although we have one of the greatest weapons budgets and defence budgets, so we haven't developed this technology. And the thing is, there's no punishment for that. This is one of the...
Yeah, Harjap, we're losing you again there. Sorry, we're going to have to let you go, I think. Harjap Bengal there, talking about how impossible it must seem that we can't stop this illegal immigration. I mean, it does seem ridiculous, does it not? If we've got 1.2 million illegal immigrants and a couple of people on Twitter asking, how do they actually live? Who employs them? How does the employer avoid national insurance? There is an awful large black market in this country, which people don't even know about. There are people working in restaurants. There are people working in the sex business. There are people working all over the country doing things like possibly cockle picking. We've seen some of the people who've come in from China and that part of the world before, as run by sort of gang masters. They're involved in all manner of different things. We're involved in the drug business, any number of things which are illegal, which go on in this country, and they need people to work in those businesses. And so probably, rather than using people who are actually here, they bring their own people in and run it that way. That's how it works, but it doesn't seem to be a very good system.
Hi, Mike. Great show, good show.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk about immigration maybe from a different direction. Instead of endlessly debating what to do about immigration, we should first ask why it occurs in the first place.
Yes. Well, I think it's not difficult to answer that question, is it?
Well, I don't know. Well, if I tell you why I think it's a problem, because Corbyn does not have the wisdom to understand it is European austerity that is the biggest cause of our immigration problem. We should ask why the EU insists on open borders as a condition of being a member. It's not because they want us all to jump on the European love train and care about one another. As human beings, we should do in any event. It's because the economic austerity policy of the EU creates economic refugees. And without open borders, the financially oppressed would die in their own countries.
Well, it's interesting because
poverty.
Yeah. The thing about it, Keith, as well, I would say, is that the open border policy from the European Union was one that we did not actually opt into. We did not opt into Schengen, right? Which meant that we still have a border. But our border appears to be pretty porous, to be honest. And it's not just the Labour Party that let a lot of immigrants in, it's the Tory Party as well. Yeah,
I know, both sides. I honestly believe it's just, austerity creates man-made racism. And the EU know this, so encourages this narrative to flourish in order to blame the plight of their impoverished citizens on our racism, not their cruel and hardline austerity policies. I mean, without European austerity, there would be fewer economic refugees and immigration would naturally slow down. Without austerity, would we all be more financially and emotionally content and would not care less who lives next door to us? We should always remember inner contentment unifies and connects us all. And we should always remember the opposite is true.
Well, that's absolutely right. But what would you do, though? Because the Tory party claim that they're going to bring in this point system, which is going to be similar to Australia. But all that will do is control who comes here to work. It won't control who comes here to seek asylum. It won't control people who come here illegally. So a lot of that won't actually change, I don't think.
No, well, this is what I said at the beginning. This goes back to the argument of what we, why, we're debating all the time about what to do about immigration, but all I'm doing, I don't really want to get involved in that. That's up to the politicians and people like yourself to debate. All I'm trying to say is that we should ask why immigration occurs in the first place, and I believe it's European austerity. I know that we can't get rid of it because these Europeans are austerity free. And this is why Corbyn has no chance of ending austerity in this country whilst tied to the apron strings of the corrupt EU masters. They've no intention of ending their own austerity policy, which is why we're better off out of it.
What do you want to tell me?
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with immigration. It's great. But if it's managed and controlled, then that's great. But that's not what we've had. Really, we've had mass uncontrolled immigration under the last Labour government. Millions of people, they purposely didn't cap the EU member states. They allowed millions of people to come from outside the EU.
But the Tories haven't done much better, have they? Because at the end of the day, Labour haven't been in for quite a long time. And so, yes, I accept that the Ed Miliband admission that they actually actively encouraged immigration and didn't really tell anybody about it. But we're talking about 1.2 million now illegal immigrants who have mostly come here during the Tories' reign.
Yeah, but do you know what? I've got family in Croydon who work for the Home Office, and the mate told me that even if they had 4 or 5 times more staff, they'd still be struggling because the sheer amount of people that want to get to Great Britain for a better life at the detriment of ours. I mean, why would we want unskilled workers from the third world or even the EU? I mean, we need to really manage it. I mean, I think we need to really put some checks and balances in now. It's gone too far.
We hear from an awful lot of businesses in this country, though, that without EU workers, they wouldn't actually be able to run their businesses because they can't find enough people in this country to employ.
Yeah, but it needs to be managed. I mean, first of all, I'd like to see ID cards. So we know. So basically, you can't live your life without one, right? Mm-hmm. You want to rent a car or get a house, anything, you need your ID card. And I think that would show us how many people are actually here illegally.
Yeah.
I think we need to get tough. I mean, we need to manage it. I think it's about time we had a government that, I mean, on the doorstep, right? In the past 6 general elections, the top 2 topics were on the doorstep were immigration and the economy. And I think it's time. Your average person out there wants the government to get a grip. And I'm one of those people, Mike. I mean, if you think about the census of 1951, right, what it showed us was that 98.8% of the population were white, spoke English as a first language, and were broadly Christian. Now, in less than one man's lifetime, we have what we've got today. And I think, while some immigration is good when it's managed, we've had far too much immigration for too long, Mike.
Let's talk to Susan, who's in Exeter. I think she's back. Susan, hello.
Good afternoon, Michael. I do apologise sincerely about this phone. I've just changed networks and
Have
people
you?
are getting a lot of trouble trying to get through to me. It's getting embarrassing now.
Right.
I'll have to go down and see about it. I do apologise.
Don't worry. Listen, all is forgiven, Susan. What would you like to say?
Thank you. Well, there are various issues, Mike, but I know you're on a tight schedule with time.
I
But
am.
the thing with foreign aid is I've had lots of African friends in London. They were amazing people.
Uh-huh.
And they told me that the problem with Africa and foreign aid is the whole of the African continent is corrupt. It's riddled with corruption at the top, the governments. And as fast as you give them money, they will fill their own pockets first. They care nothing about their people.
Well, that's the trouble with a lot of the
people.
countries in Africa. They have been ruled by some really unsavoury people, haven't they?
Yes. And you see, you're hitting a brick wall the whole time. My solution there is I wouldn't give them anything.
No.
I would not give them a penny. I would say, look, if you need water, we'll send you some engineers. We'll dig the wells for you. We'll tell you how to maintain them. We'll train you to dig for them yourselves. And you must look after your people and your land. You have to take charge of what's going on here.
Well, what's interesting, Susan, though, is that, I don't know if you know this, but in most parts of Africa, China has now kind of moved in, right? So China, in return for building infrastructure like roads and railways and things, have basically taken control of all of the mineral rights. They've taken control of an awful lot of the land. And so I guess if we're not involved in any countries like that, then we're just giving it all away to China.
You see, that's another problem. The Chinese, I love the Chinese. I've got Chinese friends, as you probably have.
I have.
But you see, the Chinese, the average person is lovely. They're very sweet, nice people. But you see, the Chinese government, they're raping the earth. They're all in the Middle East. They're all across Africa.
Yep.
Kenya's bankrupt because
South America as well.
Huge loans. South America, they're building a canal near the Suez or something. They're even in the Caribbean.
Why are they building a canal near the Suez Canal? There's already a canal.
Well, I don't know. They're doing something. It was on the World Service.
Was it?
They're up there and they're doing another canal. They're doing something.
Okay.
And they're raping. They've got interests in Europe. They're raping the earth, and nobody seems to do anything about it.
Well, they've got the money, I'm afraid. That's the problem, Susan. Listen, thanks for your call. I'm going to run. As you say, we're on a tight schedule here at Talk Radio. Jenny is in High Wycombe. Hello, Jenny.
Hello there, Mike.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks. I just wanted to say, how brilliant the NHS has been for me personally.
Okay.
And when I was very unwell, having been very seriously injured indeed in a car crash, I had carers for months and months, 4 times a day. And many of those girls, they were from places like Romania and all over the place. And they were just wonderful girls. And I do think that, A, we should not have an open door policy. Absolutely no way. Otherwise, everybody's going to want to come here, Mike. I mean, let's face it. If you speak a foreign language, if you're abroad, what's it going to be? It's going to be English, right? So where do you want to go? You want to go to the UK. And why do you want to go to the UK? Because you go to the UK and you can get, a cheap house paid for by everyone. You can get benefits left, right and centre. And that's how it goes. So obviously people are going to want to come to the UK because, it's financially the best option for them. But we should definitely let the people who are already here stay here, no question about it. I mean, I had the most wonderful carers. They were just great.
Well, there's no doubt, is there, that if we had less immigration in this country, we would have fewer businesses, we would have fewer service industry type jobs, we would have fewer people doing those types of jobs. I mean, all you have to do is go out in London. It's almost impossible to find somebody who isn't from another country working in a rrestaurant, Very, very unusual. And so I'm not sure about... having this number of illegal immigrants coming into the country, which we are now told is...
Not.
But the new system won't stop that anyway.
No, indeed it won't. But obviously we should let those who are already here stay here. That I think is a given.
Yes.
But there's no way you can have open door. You just cannot. You have to be, reticent about your borders. You have to. We've got enough trouble with people coming over in dinghies. And, I don't care what people say, you're racist, you're this, you're that. No, I speak several foreign languages. My husband's black. I mean, for goodness sake, my father-in-law's from Nigeria. it's just rubbish.
It
what
is
they come
rubbish.
out with
Yeah, but this is the current
Totally
state of the
rubbish.
debate in this country. That, as I was saying to Steve Bannon, these people who would like to make sure that you use particular words, that they would like to make sure that you and your language is tempered by them. Well, I don't want to live in a country where I'm told what I can say and what I can't say. And whatever I say, I use words very accurately and very particularly, and I will not be told by a politician or anybody else which words I can use. Thanks.
Yes, I mean, you cannot have that, and I think that's something that's very, very dangerous, having people saying how you can express yourself.
Yeah.
What you mean is, no, you don't. You mean what you want to say, and you say what you want to mean. So that's my feeling. But definitely we should let those who are here stay. However, we should make sure that, people go out to fill the jobs that were, many of them, filled by people who have gone back to these Eastern European countries, for example, who say, well, I'm not going to stay after you get out of the EU. Well, fine. We've got plenty of jobs, but we've got a lot of people who just want to live off the state, Mike. There's no question about it.